For decades, right, the Jeffrey Epstein story was all about rumors, whispers, sealed documents. But then, late in 2025, everything changed. A court order blew the doors off a secret archive, and it completely shifted what we thought we knew. So the big question is, what did we finally learn?
Okay, so when we say this was an unprecedented data dump, what are we talking about? We're talking about 3.5 million pages of federal records. I mean, just think about that. That's FBI investigations, grand jury files, witness interviews, photos, videos, just suddenly out there for everyone to see. The scale of it is it's almost impossible to wrap your head around.
So how did this even happen? I mean, this wasn't some kind of leak, right? No, this was the direct result of a brand new law, the Epstein Files Transparency Act of 2025. It basically forced the government to open its books on the whole sordid affair.
And that really brings us to the core of it all. After years and years of speculation, with millions of pages just dropped into the public domain, what did the archives actually reveal? Was there a smoking gun? Did we get the answers everyone was looking for?
All right, so first up, let's talk about how this all got started. I mean, these files didn't just appear out of nowhere. This whole thing was forced into motion by a really rare and incredibly fast-moving act of Congress.
And you can really see the political pressure cooker this was in. You had this bipartisan discharge petition, which basically let a group of reps force a vote, bypassing all the usual roadblocks. The House passed it with just one person voting no. One. The Senate approved it unanimously the very next day. I mean, that's lightning speed for Washington. There was a little bit of a delay, some friction with the DOJ, but by January 30th, 2026, the floodgates opened.
Okay, so the files are out, and what's fascinating is that the first big thing that jumped out, it wasn't a list of names like everyone expected. No, it was a blueprint. These files laid out in painstaking detail the actual mechanics of this incredibly sophisticated, highly structured criminal operation.
It basically worked like a pyramid scheme. Young women and girls were lured in with promises of legitimate work, only to be coerced into giving massages. They'd get a few $100 in cash. But here's the really twisted part. They were given bonuses to recruit their friends, to bring new girls into the system. And the documents paint Ghislaine Maxwell as a mastermind of psychological control, sitting right at the center of it all. And the secrecy? It was just absolute. This quote, it comes from a 58-page household manual for his Florida mansion. Can you imagine? Staff weren't even allowed to make small talk about the weather. Their one job was simple. See nothing, hear nothing, say nothing. Just be invisible.
This thing was a global machine, and the files show that each property had a very specific job. You had Palm Beach, that was ground zero for local recruitment. Then there was a Manhattan townhouse, the social hub for networking with the powerful and famous. His private island, Little St. James, that was for getting high-profile visitors completely off the grid. And then you have Paris, which acted as the international link, using the modeling world as a pipeline for victims.
Okay, let's get to the part I know everyone was waiting for, the names. And yes, the files did reveal this whole web of powerful people. But, and this is really important to get straight, the documents themselves don't prove anyone committed a crime. What they do is provide a factual, documented record of who was around, who was talking to whom, and who was traveling where.
So, looking at Donald Trump, the files confirmed he flew on Epstein's jet at least 8 times between 93 and 96. That's more flights than was previously known. The files also included an uncorroborated tip from an FBI tip line in 2020, but it's important to note the DOJ later came out and called that specific allegation unfounded and false. And then there was also some social contact documented, like emails between Melania Trump and Ghislaine Maxwell.
Now for the Clintons. The archives confirmed Bill Clinton took at least 4 international trips on Epstein's plane. There was also witness testimony from Johanna Schoberg, who recalled Epstein claiming that, quote, Clinton likes them young. And a pretty big chunk of the files also documented how they ignored multiple subpoenas from a House committee that was investigating all of this.
And then there's this email. It's become pretty infamous. It's from a sender who's only identified as A, writing from Balmoral, who asks Ghislaine Maxwell for some new inappropriate friends. Her reply is just, well, it's right there on your screen. It's such a chilling look at how casual, how normal these kinds of conversations apparently were. So, as you can imagine, the moment these documents hit the public, the fallout was immediate. And it wasn't just in the US. This thing sparked political crises all over the globe. Back in the States, the Clintons' refusal to show up for their scheduled depositions led to a pretty big moment. The House Oversight Committee voted to hold them in contempt of Congress, and this wasn't just a party line thing. 9 Democrats crossed the aisle to vote with Republicans, which really showed just how serious the situation had become.
But honestly, one of the biggest bombshells came out of Norway, of all places. The files revealed that Crown Princess Mette-Marit had over 1,000 mentions in the archive. This wasn't a casual acquaintance. We're talking about a connection that continued long after his 2008 conviction, even including a stay for several days at his Palm Beach mansion in 2013.
And the dominoes just kept toppling across Europe. You had Peter Mandelson in the UK, a former ambassador, resigning from the Labour Party. In Slovakia, a top government official had to step down after photos and emails showed he'd met with Epstein after his conviction. And that's just a couple of examples. Several political careers were just over.
So after all that, what's the legacy here? We've got this mountain of 3.5 million pages. What did it all really tell us in the end?
And this is maybe the most important takeaway. Everyone was expecting a simple client list, right? A document that just named names. But what we got was something way more complex, and maybe even more disturbing. The archive didn't give us a list, it gave us a map. A map of power, of influence, and of the decades of institutional failure that let this whole thing happen in the first place.
And for the victims, this next part is probably the most infuriating. After sifting through all 3.5 million pages, the Department of Justice announced its review was over. And the result? No new criminal charges. The official line was that even though the information is deeply troubling, it just doesn't meet the legal bar for new prosecutions. You can imagine the outrage.
So that leaves us with a really tough question, doesn't it? We got the transparency everyone demanded, but it didn't really deliver the justice so many victims deserved. So, if the evidence reveals not just a few bad actors, but an entire system, an entire ecosystem of power and protection, what does accountability even mean then? What does it truly look like?